Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Rick Shelton. I'm a student at Valdosta State University. Today we're going to do a short film on forklift safety. And our instructor, our forklift driver, is Tony. Tony works here at the warehouse. I'm not going to say where, but it's a pretty large warehouse. I don't know if you know, Tony, but approximately 35,000 people are killed or seriously injured a year in forklift accidents. And 65,000 people are seriously injured, killed, or injured. So it's pretty serious business. So Tony, if you would you kind of inspect the forklift for us? Show us what you do when you inspect it before you get going in the morning.
Sure thing. So first thing we usually try to do is make sure that the parking brake's on. You also want to make sure before, you might just turn the key, just see if the lights are working, things like that. You also want to go around, make sure there's nothing that gets in between the tires or that could get up into the exhaust or the radiator, which is right behind. And you'll basically just inspect where your battery plugs are, make sure they're nice and tight. No loose wires, plugs. You also want to check the front where your oil rigs go through with your oil lines. And you basically want to make sure there's no leaks or anything, and so far it looks pretty good. So at this point, you would end up going to the next level.
Okay, well, fantastic. I tell you what, that's a lot of steps, and you know them like the back of your hand. Good job. Hey, one of the things they always talk about when driving a forklift is seatbelt, and
Right.
As far as safety is concerned, can you explain to me why wearing a seatbelt is important?
Yes. Well, for instance, stand-ups don't have a seatbelt. However, they have a body implant to where your knees fit perfectly in and your back adjusts just right. So it basically molds you into the forklift. Now with regular driving forklifts, you'll see that a lot of forklifts can actually be checked to where it won't start unless you do put your seatbelt. Some of them don't, this one doesn't. But it's just precautionary. You never know what could happen going down a ramp or anything like that. And one of the biggest rules is always stay inside the forklift at all times.
Fantastic. Appreciate that information, Tony. Pedestrians, people walking around, people working in the warehouse. What do they have to be aware of, and what do you have to be aware of as a forklift driver?
Right. Well, like this forklift, it can be very dangerous because in this instance, when I push forward, you can't hear it at all. But it's actually on, and people can't see that. Now, if you have coolers that have blinds or you have a wide load in front, visibility to the driver becomes minute or just not there at all. And this, basically the precautions that they have to take is you honk the horn anytime you make a corner, you drive backwards to ensure that if you have a pedestrian, you're able to see them firsthand. If you have a load in front, and you cannot see, the only time that you are allowed to do that is if you are in the proximity of where you are supposed to be. However, in the rules and laws of forklift driving, you are not allowed to actually drive forward with a wide load. And if you go into a cooler that has blinds where visibility is obscured, then you also have to go in backwards as well.
Okay, fantastic. Now, as far as intersections are concerned, you have to worry about the pedestrians there also, right?
Yes.
So what do you do when you come up on an intersection?
Well, the key thing to always do is to prevent any kind of risk, any kind of injury. You always allow the pedestrian the right-of-way. If this means that you have to move in somewhat fashion to get away from the pedestrian or to just simply stop and allow them to move across, you always allow them to go first. You never want to take the chance of being the one to move out of the intersection.
How about with a raised load? I've always heard that it's not very safe to travel on a forklift with a raised load, especially a heavy load. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, so for instance, if I was to carry a load, the first rule of any time you use the forklift is that you will always keep your forks either 6 inches or lower. This prevents anything. If I was to get hit in the ankle, I could just move my ankle backwards. But if you were to hit me directly above like the knee or whatever, then all that does is make me move forward instead of being able to step up or anything. So the first rule is always 6 inches or lower. And if you have a heavy load, just like any load, you want to treat any load as if it was a heavy load. You would move the forks all the way back, and this basically prevents the forklift allowing, if you were to brake hard, it would prevent it from pushing forward. If you had, sometimes pallets can get up to 3,000 pounds. If you just suddenly stopped in case of pedestrian, the load would shift up, but with it being back like this, the balance just isn't allowed to go up, so it would just maintain a steady, back load.
Fantastic. I've learned a lot about forklift safety today. Is there anything you want to add to this, Tony?
I think the only thing I would add to it is that, with forklifts, it can be different depending on what you are driving, whether it is a stand-up forklift or a sit-down forklift, but they're all relatively the same. And the best kind of safety advice that I could offer anybody that wants to know the main rules is to basically always use your parking brake. Don't ever allow an excuse to prevent you from actually following all the safety procedures and all that. And there should be no excuse at the end if you do follow all the safety protocol.
Okay, Tony. Well, I do appreciate your participation in this film, and you have a great day, and stay safe.
Thank
Bye.
you.